Anthony Grassi here at the 2025 NCAA Convention here for D3 Ticker. Happy to sit down with Louise McCleary, the Vice President of Division III. Louise, thank you for joining me.
Anthony, it's a pleasure to be here.
So we'll start big picture. How would you describe the state of Division III?
You know, if I just did Division III by itself, I think we have done some amazing things in terms of championship enhancements as well as our enrichment fund, but we're not by ourselves. Division III is within the entire NCAA. There's a lot swirling in higher education, let me go the highest, as well as in college athletics. And that creates anxiety. It creates anxiety and enrollment cliff, the pressures around higher education, the change that may or may not happen in college athletics. While there's a focus on Division I, there's a reality for Division III to say, how might this impact us? So again, we are doing some really good things in Division III, but we also need to keep that tempered to know that it is in an environment right now that is ever changing, and that's putting sort of the spotlight on our councils and our membership to say, how are we proactive in our decision making? How do we keep our principles and our core values near and dear to us, but also understand the landscape's changing?
Absolutely. And obviously come Friday, there will be six proposals that are on the docket. I'm curious what your read as we sit here right now on Tuesday, is for what the kind of feedback the membership will have on those proposals.
That's right. So for the first time in a couple of years, I think all 6 proposals will be supported overwhelmingly. They are proposals to expand our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. I think everybody says that makes sense. We want to have every conference represented. There's a proposal there. You know, we had a new constitution in 2022. We had a federated rules process. There's a proposal there to say, okay, is there enough checks and balances around that? Let's give some more authority to our management council. I think that will pass. There's a proposal around reclassifying and can we create a waiver if they're meeting everything? So that's an NCAA Division I or II looking to Division III. Can we shorten that process? There's a proposal around sort of aligning the single sport conference minimum requirements with the multi-sport. Right now, the multi-sport has a higher threshold. I think the sponsors are like, does that really make sense? It will make sense to put it all in alignment. We're going to look at our legislative process. How do we get our membership more involved with that? I think I've hit them all, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that our membership says we've had a chance to give feedback on these proposals. We support them, and you're going to see that in the votes on Friday morning.
We'll look forward to seeing how that plays out on Friday morning. We're going through this is the first fall of the NCAA's new championships deal with ESPN. I'm curious what the feedback you've heard and received on the first season of competition through the championships.
So with that, one, it added dollars to our annual revenue, which is a benefit for sure, because that allowed us to have some championship enhancements like increasing per diem. But what it also did with ESPN is every round of our football championship was live streamed by ESPN. Our host did the work, but it was put on ESPN. The same for women's volleyball, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the championship. I have joked about this. ESPN has 25 million subscribers. I am now a new subscriber, so it's 25 million and one. But to be able to have that exposure of Division III and the quality of our student athletes, to learn more about our institutions, is priceless in many ways. We're excited to see it happen for men's and women's basketball for the semifinals and the championship this winter. We also expanded our own live streaming requirements. Now every team championship, every round, the host needs to live stream it. We worked out a deal with NCAA.com and Huddle. This fall, you could have gone to NCAA.com. We had 16 first-round games for soccer. I'll use that example. Fan could go there, alumni, just somebody who loves soccer. They went to NCAA.com and they saw all 16 links in one place. Our viewership for the fall went from 2.3 million last year to 11.3 million this year. That's exactly what we're looking for to increase our brand across the country beyond what we already know in Division III, that we have a quality, phenomenal product. This takes it to the next level to let others know that.
What was the breakdown of what sports maybe saw the biggest increase? So the only, I guess, public number that we've seen is that the football championship was basically the same viewership.
Yep.
Obviously, changed from a Friday night solo spot basically on ESPNU to
Yep.
being on an NFL Sunday, which I don't think anybody in America wants to have an event go against NFL Sunday. I'm curious which sports kind of saw the biggest increase in this move.
That's right. For the live streaming, we don't have the ESPN numbers yet,
Okay.
but for the live streaming, men's soccer saw the most viewers. But what we did is we said we want to take one of our fall championships and use President Baker's NCAA fan database. Say we want to promote that championship with the fan database, send direct emails, encourage watching the live stream or going to the event. Field hockey saw an increase of viewers of over 150%. It worked. We are looking to do the same with one winter championship and then again in the spring. And then we'll continue to work with President Baker, others to say, okay, can we expand this as we move into 25-26? But it's pretty neat to know that you have a fan database of 13 million. We could promote one of our championships and then actually see the positive results on the back end.
Have you already picked which winter and spring championships are going to be?
We're still going through that.
Okay.
So since we picked a women's sport in the fall, we'll probably lean towards a men's sport in the
Okay.
winter. And we may stay away from the basketballs because they are on ESPN, so we wouldn't be able to get the data all the way through.
Okay.
And it's important to get every round. So I've narrowed it down for all of your listeners. But there's a reason why we're doing that, because right now, this first year in this pilot year, having that data is so important to go, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and how can we continue to improve it?
Do you have a sense of what the max is? Obviously, you've run a test through this. It's been super successful. Do you have an idea at this point of, all right, if we went full go,
Yep.
here's what this could be, and maybe what's the, I guess, potential timeline on getting to the max?
That's right. You know, in many ways, I think it's unlimited. We have over 200,000 student athletes. We have had that for years. So think how many Division III former student athletes are out there that are just interested in their sport. Then we have the average fan. Then we have families. We went from 2.3 million to 11 million. I would love to see that 11 million go to 20 million. And we want to keep growing it because the idea behind it is, if you grow it, do you grow it to a level that then sponsors say, well, we'd like to advertise on that because now you've grown the viewership. If that's the case, that can bring revenue to Division III. And what we'd like to do, at least until we build our brand, is to stay away from a paywall. All of that live streaming I mentioned, there was no paywall involved. And that's very important right now for our membership to promote our brand and not turn anybody away until we build it.
Is that a potential down the line? Obviously not right now. But
It is. That's something that we're looking at. If we can keep building it, again, we're collaborating with senior leadership at the NCAA to say, if we build it and there are sponsors that are interested, yes, we need to work through some corporate partnerships and agreements right now. But I think there's this thought of, not only for Division III, but Division II, if there's an opportunity to generate revenue to help offset some of those live streaming costs, that makes sense for everybody involved.
That's some of that NCAA network stuff that we've seen
That's
a little
right.
bit trickle out thus
That's
far
right.
through committee meeting stuff. I'm curious, you know, we talked this time last year about the reserves. Educated me, which I greatly appreciate, but I'm curious, is there still, as we sit here right now, maybe what the focuses are for spending beyond or spending down that mandated reserve? And is there still, I guess, the appetite to spend down that mandated reserve to beyond what is or where it currently is?
Yeah. I think there's still an appetite,
Okay.
but there's always an asterisk because as we started this, it's an uncertain world. And so our mandated reserve was never set up to say this will sustain us for years and years. It's really, it will sustain us for 6 to 12 months if there's a revenue loss. Unfortunately, we have a very recent example of that with the pandemic. And so that we will always keep that mandated reserve. But what we're doing right now with that surplus, we have a health and safety grant that every institution can ask for up to $2,000 in reimbursements to help offset athletic training needs. We are looking at a mental health partnership where we would provide training for head coaches and athletic trainers on us to be certified for 3 years. And then they would do a recertification after the 3 years if they so chose. We increased our per diem for championships. We're looking at bracket flexibility to help protect our higher seats. So we are doing things intentionally, not with spend that will compound year after year, but with sort of those one-off spends that will help us spend down that surplus at the moment. I say all of that, depending on what the next 6 to 12 months tells us around college athletics and higher education. Our President's Council, Strategic Planning and Finance may say, should we rethink this? But at the moment, I think last year I mentioned we did a review by Deloitte. They came in and they looked at, really at a high level, all of our finances. And they said, find ways to support your membership. Keep your mandated reserve, but you don't want to necessarily build up that surplus, but instead do some of the things that I mentioned that our governance structure has approved, and we've been able to give back to our membership.
In your opinion, obviously, there's a lot of potential uncertainty, as you just mentioned. Yeah. Is there, in your opinion, is there comfort in having something beyond maybe 1 year's worth, given the potential changes, or is there? And I guess this, as you mentioned, this will be something that is discussed ad nauseum. But is in your opinion, is that maybe how it should be?
Yeah, in my opinion, no. I actually think our mandated reserve is in a good place because we learned from the pandemic. Mm-hmm. We know how much money we need to help us get through a year. I think our membership, based on the enrollment cliff, based on the pandemic and the continuing impact on our budgets, based on the need to have high quality championships, we should be spending the money that we're spending it right now to say, we want to make sure that we're supporting our membership to the fullest while keeping that mandated reserve.
You mentioned the mental health partnership you guys are exploring. Are there other areas where the division can take that approach where we will front something, we know it's important, we will one time front some of the expenditure, and then that can kind of get passed down to all the individual institutions can handle beyond that initial expenditure?
Yeah, so I'll stay with the mental health. If we front load it, then after the 3 years with the recertifying, they could go to their conference to say, could there be conference grant dollars to do that? As I mentioned, we have a health and safety grant. They could use that as a allowable reimbursement. So there are different things to say, if we front load it, also knowing what the recertification is, do a little saving maybe over those 3 years so you're ready to go in a similar situation to how you do with AED, first aid, and CPR training. It's a first step of a need that has been voiced loudly, especially by our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. But you have to make sure if you're going to make a significant investment that you're checking all the boxes. It's the right thing. It's going to assist our membership. It won't be mandatory. So an institution may say, no, we have a different program. Then that's terrific. But for those who need this assistance, especially in this space that so many of our student athletes are really seeking guidance and help from their head coaches, I think it's going to be something that, I've used this before also, a game changer for many of our institutions. Absolutely. And for our division. Absolutely.
This year was also big because you guys rolled out the NPI. I'm curious, through the fall, how that went with this individual sport committees. I'm curious what the feedback was actually being in practice for the first time.
Yeah, so I'm the vice president. None of that came to my office. So It tells me on some level it went well.
Good.
It also did what we wanted it to do. It created transparency. Teams knew 3 weeks out, where am I? Am I going to have a chance to get in, or am I not going to have a chance to get in? It assisted the committees that instead of spending 8 hours selecting those at-larges, it occurred in a minute, which allowed them to turn their focus to bracketing, which has also been a priority of our membership, especially those that are going to championship year after year, to say, are we bracketing in a manner that can find a way to keep our principles, but also protect our higher seats? That all occurred. Now, coaches associations for the fall are meeting right now. Our championships committee is waiting to get their feedback during their February and March meetings. We're not going to make any adjustments for the winter and spring. We're going to keep moving forward, but we'll keep collecting that feedback and then be able to have our championships committee discuss it, see if they need to make any recommendations up to our management council. But knowing how much work went into it, 2 years worth of research and data and testing, knowing that there was some anxiety with it, I think in many ways it was hugely successful for our fall, and we're excited to use it for our winter team championships.
You mentioned some of those bracketing principles as being kind of one of the next focuses for championships. Yeah. Do you have a sense of what the priorities or maybe some of the changes should be implemented and maybe what the timeline for those getting done is?
Yeah, so I think we've implemented them. It's really, so if you take, it could be anywhere, the Midwest, and you have 2 top teams in women's volleyball. What was happening is, and they're from different conferences, they may have faced each other in the first or second round. And so what our membership said is there a way for those 2 top teams, we're using NPI, to maybe go to a different region? Maybe number 1 is going to stay as the host, but number 2, there's a thought today, it may change to say, I'd rather travel so I'm not facing a number 1 or another top team than host. That may change, but at the moment, that's where the membership is. And I think this 2-year pilot of working through this will allow us to get that feedback to go, okay, now you've experienced it. Is it really better to not face the number 1 or number 2 or number 3 and travel, or do we go back to the old way? We do not have the financial support to do both. It probably needs to be one or the other, but it's something the championships committee will always look at to say, what's the membership feedback? What are we hearing from the coaches associations? What are we hearing from everyone? Are we in a right spot? And again, I think at first glance, we did the NPI, that worked. We're doing this bracketing flexibility, that's working. There's transparency. It's easing the work of our volunteer committee members.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of pluses so far. We're only 1 season into it. When I see you again in a year, we'll have 3 more seasons under our belt, and we'll have a much better idea.
Absolutely. So I guess you have the last 2 questions. One follow-up on the MPI. Given that the dials are locked in for 2 years?
That's right.
Yes.
Through 2 seasons.
Yes. Yeah. Will championship alterations, maybe bracketing principles too, kind of should they or will they align with that 2-year window? And will it kind of give you a good check-in point to say, all right, we're doing this for 2 years and we'll have a full 2 seasons of this to say, all right, there can be flukes, there can be one-offs here and there, but we'll have 2 goes at this. So ideally, we'll see all the kinks that may be in the system and we can fix them come 2 years.
That's right. And that's why we said 2 years. I will tell you, I'm going to use women's volleyball. The top 8 teams in the NPI all made it to the final 8. Field hockey, the top 4 teams all made it to the final 4. Soccer's, there were a few upsets here and there. But for the most part, those NPI rankings actually played out by their rankings, getting those teams to the championship. It's 1 year.
Right.
Who knows if it's going to happen, right? So you look at other divisions, you look at the college football playoffs. That is not the case, right? So it's sport. That's what everybody loves about sport. Who knows? You may have an upset here or there. But I think, again, from what I have heard from our membership, from what I've heard from the championships committee, that bracketing flexibility, that MPI has been a success, knowing that it will always be evaluated and adjustments will be made if needed.
Absolutely. So I'll get you into the last question. I'm curious what your approach is to leading a membership-driven organization where you don't have the authority to say, here's the change I want to make, and I'm going to make it because I have the power to do so. That's a unique dynamic. So I'm curious how you think about serving as the Vice President of Division III through that lens.
That's right. So I'm serving. And I think what it comes down to is you communicate, you collaborate, and you compromise. And that's how I have, I've been in the vice president role now for 2 years. You continue to refine that, but those are the most important things. I don't think there is value if I came in and said, we need to do this. Because at the end of the day, we have 425 member schools. We have 42 conferences. They are living it every day to say, how can I communicate so that we can hear what the issues are, what the concerns are, what the anxieties are. We can collaborate to find the best solutions. And then sometimes we need to compromise and find the middle ground to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. Louise, thank you so much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.